abject failure to address it has left them angry and hurt. The Chief Constable says he's not sure that his officers will be able to deliver justice. Speaking at an event at Queen's University last night, George Hamilton said strains on the system and the length of time that's passed, more than 40 years for some, meant the likelihood of a criminal justice outcome would be reduced. Mr Hamilton told one man, a relative of one of those killed in the 1971 McGurk's bar bombing, that the current structure for looking into the past is entirely inadequate and the police service is not equipped.
When you get a tsunami of requests coming in from the courts through judicial reviews, the coronial system, that actually the whole organisation is going to grind to a halt, and that is the mess that we are in around this. I have never pretended that it's any different to that, and whilst I have some sympathy for the frustration that you and the other McGurk families, and indeed many other dozens, hundreds of families are experiencing at the moment, I haven't pretended that we're on top of this. I haven't pretended that it's acceptable. I'm saying that the infrastructure is creaking, that we are putting significant resource to this, and it's not enough. In fact, if we put the whole organisation to it, it probably wouldn't be enough because of the magnitude of the task.
Also at the event was Republican Evelyn Glenn Holmes. She was once top of the UK's most wanted list and went on the run, but was appointed to the Forum for Victims and Survivors in 2012. After working closely with families touched by the Troubles, she spoke of the devastation she's seen from relatives denied the truth of what happened to their loved ones, as politicians here fail to reach an agreement on Northern Ireland's legacy.
I have never witnessed collective despair across the whole community as I did after it was announced that there was no deal on legacy. For the first time, I saw utter despair. Utter despair. I saw people crying who could not believe that politicians, political leaders who they elected, who had assured them that we were this close to a deal, we were going to deliver, failed to do so.
Well, George Hamilton also dismissed claims that the PSNI's predecessor, the RUC, had warning of the Shankill bomb. The IRA attack in 1993 left 10 dead, 9 Protestants and 1 of the bombers. A report in the Irish News this week has been claiming the IRA leader who planned it was working as an RUC informer. That's now been investigated by the police ombudsman.
Well, listening to that is Sinn Féin's Gerry Kelly, and in the studio with us is Emma Pengelly from the DUP. Good morning, both very welcome. Emma Pengelly, if I can begin with you, more heartache, it seems, for victims this morning. The Chief Constable spelling out there that there is little prospect of justice.
Absolutely. The DUP have been working on and delivering a range of strong and sensible policies in relation to the economy, on health and on education in order to build a better future for Northern Ireland. But that better future must include victims and survivors, and that can only happen if there is a comprehensive and workable set of proposals and policies in relation to dealing with the legacy of the past.
But that lack of political agreement has prevented the delivery of structures to cope with these historic cases. George Hamilton saying that the whole organisation, the PSNI, is going to grind to a halt over this.
Well, we believe that there is a very good set of proposals there. The DUP went into the Stormont House talks with a number of key issues. First of all, there could be absolutely no amnesty for terrorists. Secondly, victims and survivors of the Troubles must be given the best opportunity for justice. And thirdly, there must not be any revisionism in relation to the past by Sinn Féin or others. We believe the proposals on the table do that. In the final days of the negotiation, Sinn Féin and the Secretary of State could not agree on a very narrow issue, which was the definition of what was full disclosure. We believe that this was because of the unrealistic demands of a very small number of families, and therefore we are calling on Sinn Féin to resolve this issue with the Secretary of State. And in the meantime, we have called on the Secretary of State and the British Government to release those much needed funds to the PSNI, to the Coroner's Courts, in order to allow justice to be delivered for the very, very many tens of thousands of victims and survivors who rightly deserve it.
Gerry Kelly, the process is being held hostage over the demands of a small number of Republican families. Is that your take on it?
No, it's not our take on it, and to say that there's a small number of Republican families is absolutely wrong, and Emma Pengelly knows that because she was at the top along with myself. You can't talk about the past, Colin, without actually dealing with the issues which are historical. It's okay for George Hamilton to say, and quite accurately, that the police aren't capable of dealing with it at the moment, but let's be very clear. It was the police historically who refused to give disclosure, who were not given the information that was necessary to go through the coroner's courts and to deal with issues of the past. And if you're watching what's happening in the court at the moment under Justice Weir, you will hear him criticising that precise problem.
But you yourself used the phrase historically. It does not seem to be the PSNI that is a block to progress now. It's your beef with the British government.
And in fairness, well, don't we say it's our beef with the government? It could be the government's beef with the family. Because what was agreed and what the British Secretary of State said quite openly was that she was for full disclosure. She then introduced at the end of this her own veto, the veto of the British government, to be able to say what will be disclosed and what will not, and heading under the guise of national security. The families want the truth. We listened to the families. We were talking to the families over the full period of those negotiations, and this issue can be resolved. We put forward an appeal system which would have an international part to it.
Is the British government receptive to that idea?
Well, the British government rejected it. That's the problem.
So we're no further forward?
Pardon?
We're no further forward?
Well, we put another option forward, which is already in existence. The power that the police ombudsman has to decide on these matters should be given to the director of the new historical inquiry unit. So let's make it very, very clear when the finger is pointed at local politicians. It is the British government, again, who refused to give out information before. And just to put this in context, when they try and say this is about national security, as we sit, the British Secretary of State has actually tried to block information which is already in the public interest, which the Culture Minister, Caroline Killen, was given out to families.
Do you see
tried to block that as well.
Do you see an end to this situation? The First Minister, Arlene Foster, is already on the record as saying she does not believe the matter will be resolved ahead of the May elections. Do you see a way through this?
I think that's quite depressing, but yes, I do see a way through it. I've already painted out the way that we can go ahead, but the government needs to engage in this and find a way through it. We can't find a way through it on our own. They are the ones who have put the roadblock in the way to families getting to the truth, and families deserve the truth. And
okay, let's bring them up.
I agree with Emma Pengelly on this, that they need to be central to moving forward. But we have the architecture, the mechanisms were agreed, and it was the British government who then put in the block for the veto.
Emma Pengelly, he says it's depressing to think that this cannot be resolved ahead of the election, which the First Minister, Arlene Foster, your party leader, has suggested. He does, though, think that more pressure can be brought to bear on the British government. Are you likely to aid Sinn Féin to that end?
Well, I think the matter can be resolved if Sinn Féin get sensible and get on with it. They need to resolve this issue. I do believe that their demands are totally unrealistic. Every government all over the world retains authority in relation to national security.
So is it time for honesty from everyone, all of the players, to say to victims, your expectations are unrealistic because the government's not going to move on this?
Well, I think it's the expectations, unrealistic expectations of a very small number of victims and survivors. The vast majority of the victims and survivors who suffered loss, who suffered injury, they did that at the hands of terrorists on both sides. Those issues can be investigated by the PSNI. Those issues are before the courts at the moment. There is much needed funding in order to address those issues and address so swiftly. The Chief Constable could not have been clearer on this matter. There is money there. Money was negotiated for this. It's sitting ready to be released as soon as Sinn Féin can get sensible, get on with it and get it agreed and stop holding the vast majority of victims and survivors to ransom for the unrealistic demands of a few.
Gerry Kelly, you need to get sensible.
But I say yet again that Emma Pengelly, representing the DUP, have approached this in a sectarian way. She is dismissing.
I'm sure she would deny
the victims. She is dismissing the victims. She's saying a small minority is old messed up. She is dismissing the victims. She's saying
the majority of victims are not in this category.
Let me finish the point. She is saying, and she spent some time at it and repeated it a number of times, basically that the nationalist victims of the conflict are irrelevant in this. And the nationalist victims...
She did not say nationalist victims are irrelevant.
Well, she said Republican victims.
I never mentioned, to be fair, Gerry, I never mentioned in terms of any designation of victims and survivors. It was a small group of families that are holding out for this definition of full disclosure.
Could you tell me who they are? Are they Republican? Are they those who want the truth from the British government, and it's the British government who refuse to give them the truth. That's the fact behind the small cliche that you're using. So let's be very clear. That's the people who you're talking to.
It means it absolutely makes no difference what their designation is, Gerry.
You haven't been talking to, Emma.
The reality is the vast majority of victims and survivors from all sides of the community here want to get their cases investigated by the PSNI.
You are prepared to ignore the victims of state violence, and that's what this comes down to, and let's be very clear about it.
But how much disclosure are IRA members during the Troubles prepared to give in non-solved murders admitted in statements at the time by that organisation?
Well, we have said from the start that we will, when the institutions are set up of the legacy issues, that we will argue, and I have said personally, that Republicans will go forward and be involved in that process.
Give thoughts in the process.
But we'll come forward and talk to all of the systems that are there. That's what the process was about. Now, the fact is that this is an argument, just to be very clear about it, between ourselves and the British government, which of course the DUP are back in the British government on, but it is really the British government who needs to resolve this. It is not new, and I repeat this because if you want evidence of why we are arguing this, then don't look to the past, look to the present, where the British Secretary of State and the NIO and the police are fighting against information which is already in the public records, in the records office, are trying to stop even those records going out to people which you or I could walk into the library tomorrow and find. Now, if you want to find out what their intent is, then don't look to the past, look to the present.
Gerry Kelly, thank you for joining us, and Emma Pengelly, thank you both.